you so much for having me here. I'm truly honoured to be here with you all, with all the esteemed guests that are here. And a particular thank you to Amit from the Affinity Intercultural Foundation. I'm Amit's delegate from Australia. And I think Amit gave an excellent introduction to the session, followed by a very powerful introduction from our chair as well. And I think knowing Amit, so I have to say, Amit's one of the kindest and wisest people I've met in a long time. And the work that he's doing, bringing communities together, the work that the Journalists and Writers Foundation is in doing in bringing all these cultural groups together, that's the antidote I feel we need to the speeches that we saw yesterday. So I do have a slideshow. I promise it's not too complicated and there's not too much text on the slides. But so you know the framework I'm coming from. I am a human rights lawyer. I have been working in AI, in governance and tech policy for around longer than I can remember, about close to a decade now. And the Human Technology Institute based in Australia is coming to this fourth industrial revolution, looking to see how we can make sure new and emerging technology is adopted in a way that is human-centric, so that we get the benefits from this very powerful technology and we don't steer towards that dystopian future that we definitely all fear. So I'm going to talk a bit today about, and I've got a great introduction. I can draw on what's already being put forward to you. I am going to be talking about AI. But first, so I give my proper framing for what civic technologies are, because like AI, there's no fixed definition, but really what we can draw from this more recent, and I can read it out for my fellow panelists if I can remember what it says. So really thinking about civic technologies, we're looking for the positive examples, ones where the use of technology is transparent, where there is accountability, where technology is used for the public interest. So when we're talking about revitalization of the Sustainable Development Goals, we are in an incredible era where there is so much potential and a lot of peril, but I will get to that. I fear as a human rights lawyer, I always look at those risks, but it is so important that we do that at the moment. And the reason why I'm going to look at AI, it is one technology. There will be other examples of civic technologies that are going to be relevant to the SDGs. My focus on AI is because of the work I do, and also because of how transformative this technology is. So if we're thinking about potential, it's incredible what AI is going to be able to achieve, because it is pervasive, because it is now touching on all parts of society, on all parts of our economy, all parts of the world, albeit in very different ways. So we have obviously a huge digital divide and we're getting an AI divide, but I'll get towards that towards the end. But really, like we've had past technologies that have completely transformed societies, that is what AI has the potential to do. And if we do it properly and we make the right choices and we ask the right questions, Martin, there couldn't be a better example than what the example you just gave, because that really translates to how we approach AI. So if we approach it in the right way, then we will be able to use these technologies to revitalise and to work towards attainment of the SDGs, with Martin's caveat that they're the wrong ones for the current era. I also wanted to say, so this is for my fellow panelists, we also steer between two extremes often. And just so you know, I'm not going down this one. So this is the headline that says AI could wipe out humanity. We often go from this polar extreme, which has a lot of political ramifications, to this one, which is that AI is going to be worth trillions. So we're all going to be better off. It's trillions and trillions of dollars, and you know, huge productivity, huge jobs. But what I want to do, and what we are doing at the Human Technology Institute, is focusing on examples of AI, how they are being used now. So we can get very distracted with the AI debate, and that's certainly happening in particular environments, and it is happening globally. We can talk about the promise of AI, but actually going from the promise of AI, or going from this extreme that it's going to wipe us all out and take all our jobs and take over, we have to have a really practical conversation now so we make the right choices. So this is from my fellow panelists. I want to talk about the promise and the peril when it comes to using AI to achieve some of the SDGs. And the best way to do this, I think, is examples. We've already had some examples from two very powerful opening keynote speeches, really talking about the threats to democracy, because what AI is doing, it's amplifying a lot of those threats. But I wanted to use a few examples, and I know there will also be examples here in the audience. I'm very conscious I'm coming from Australia. I've got particular examples of AI from my country and how we're approaching AI. But I'm really keen to hear from all of you in the questions and afterwards about how you're experiencing AI. And so when I think about applications of AI, I can think about conversations that I've had this week. So during the week, I've met an obstetrician who specialises in high-risk pregnancies in Australia. And of course, Australia has an excellent health system, but in our rural and remote areas, there are a lot of challenges. And so what she was talking about diagnostic tools in health. A lot of them are powered by AI. And she's saying what that tool is giving her, it's not replacing what she does when she goes out to rural and remote Australia, but it's speeding up the time she has to be able to get to a diagnosis really quickly and then see more people and offer more help. So those kinds of examples about health are pretty incredible when it comes to AI. I can think of other examples if we think about the SDG around, ending hunger. I've spoken to someone who might be here, I'm not sure. He's talking about an app that he has developed and is launching this week, and it's from Mali. And it's an app that, as I understood it, will provide local people, including farmers and non-farmers, with information about growing food. So using the land around them with the kind of information about weather, about what the actual crop actually needs. And that is about accessibility of information. So I thought that was another really interesting example of how we are going to work towards achieving these sustainable development goals. And those are the really practical examples that I think are particularly worthwhile. Another example I had, which I think relates to exactly to what you were talking about, Martin, with your experience with poverty and understanding poverty, is work that my colleagues, my very clever computer scientist colleagues, are doing at the Human Technology Institute. So they're doing globally leading Bayesian statistical analysis and deep machine learning to look at education in New South Wales, so the state in which I come from. So they have taken huge swathes of data held by the New South Wales Department of Education, did quite a little bit of organising of that data. And they feed it into their very spectacular mathematical formulas. They have these incredible algorithms that they do explain to us many, many times. But what they're doing is looking at all this data that's been held for decades, and they're trying to understand why some kids finish school particularly strongly and some finish at a disadvantage. And they get a huge amount of vectors. And one of the interesting things that I really thought about when you were speaking, Martin, is that they're finding unexpected causal relationships. So not just correlation, they're using AI to understand causation. And one thing they're finding, they went in thinking, as we often do, that it's lower socioeconomic status that might indicate how well a child finishes school, if they finish school at all. And actually they're finding it's a sense of belonging. So what they're doing now is going out and testing that with schools themselves. So that kind of use of example of AI is the kind that I think we need to really lean into when it comes to achieving the SDGs. We, of course, have a lot of really frightening examples, certainly of how AI is undermining human rights. We have had two very powerful speeches this morning around democracy and the world of pain I think we are in when it comes to a whole range of pressures that are dismantling democracy. AI is one of those pressures, and it's particularly when it comes to mis and disinformation, the kind of information environment that we really need to have healthy, functioning democratic processes and democratic institutions. And AI is really undermining that information environment we're in. So Amit mentioned social media. That's another really good example how those big, powerful business models that are driving particular social media trends are having impacts on health of young people, of older people, of all of us. So seeking to understand how AI is reshaping those types of those particularly big problems in Australia and everywhere around the world is really important when we think about this promise and peril How do we get to the most? And I wasn't even looking at my own timer, so I'll move on quickly. So just very quickly in my last minute, we often, it's actually one of my colleagues, I've stole this from my colleagues who does a lot of futurist thinking, but the choices for us now are extremely significant when it comes to using AI. And we've already had a few mentions of that already. But if we're to get to this preferred future, a lot is going to depend on the choices that we make now. So we could have many different futures when it comes to AI and achieving the SDGs, but we need really active decision making. We need really active leadership at this point in time now. I'm going to finish up because I'm definitely over. But when we're talking about choices, I think if we're thinking about AI as revitalizing attainment of the SDGs, this is what it's about. It's addressing that global divide. That is hugely significant. We are talking about the benefits of AI streaming to developed countries and even echelons within developed countries. We need governance. We need regulation. We need to have human rights protection at the very core of all those regulatory instruments. I guess I'd just jump in quickly to Adama's question, which is around, and I think the answer there is how you empower young people and make sure that, I think that was the question about really addressing that global divide. I think one answer is the global dialogue. So I think, though, what we haven't really touched on, but the importance of multilateral and bilateral agreements. The UN Global Dialogue on AI, it's not quite the name, someone will be able to correct me, but they're kicking off tomorrow. So that is a group of experts that is coming together to really embed human rights in how AI is governed globally. I think one thing that is super clear is that AI is a global technology. We've just got questions from around the world, and unless we have global responses, we're not going to quite address that digital divide that this participant is talking about. I think also we need to draw from regulatory responses across the world. We've got really different conversations that are happening. So in EU, you've got a very detailed AI Act that is just currently rolling out. In countries like Australia, the United States, we're veering away from that kind of strict regulation, that we do have laws in place that apply. So for me, the answer is that global dialogue. I think it could not be more important at this particular time to address the problems that this participant is asking about.